once again about many of the things that are happening in today, real time, with regards to our real estate transactions. So with that, I pass it off to my sister, Gwen Richardson, and introduction of our first speaker.
Hi. Okay, before I introduce everyone, one of our speakers is still driving. Is it okay, Miss Olivia, if you go first while we let Mr. Fagans get to his office? Uh oh, you gotta unmute yourself.
She doesn't.
Can you unmute Miss Olivia?
Gwen, can you let Tony move on to introducing who Attorney Olivia is? And then
Okay.
we'll come back to Mr. Fegans.
Okay. Woo,
Thank you.
Great, great. Hi, I'm Tony Johnson. I'm going to read a bio on Ms. Olivia H. Stoner, Esquire. Ms. Stoner is a sole practitioner specializing in estate planning, probate, and estate administration. Ms. Stoner assists clients in planning for the needs of their families by developing estate plans that take advantage of tax-efficient strategies for their transfer of wealth. Ms. Stoner has a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Wilberforce University, a Master of Arts degree in Teaching from Antioch College, a law degree from the University of Pittsburgh School of Law, a certified financial planner, designation from the College of Financial Planning, and Advanced Administration of Estates and Trust certification from the ABA National Trust School and Canon Financial Institute, along with an estate practice series certification from the Pennsylvania Bar Association. Prior to going into private practice in 2003, Ms. Stoner worked in the area of wealth management as a trust and estate administrator and private client advisor for PNC Bank and Wilmington Trust of PA. Ms. Stoner is a member of the Philadelphia Bar Association and previously served on the Education Committee and Executive Committee of the Probate Section of the Philadelphia Bar Association, the Board of Directors of the Philadelphia Tri-State Area Financial Planning Association, the Philadelphia Minority Business Strategic Alliance, the Urban Financial Services Coalition, the West Philadelphia Branch YWCA, and October Gallery International Art Expo. We welcome you, Ms. Stoner, and we will add your information to the chat, all your contact information.
Thank you. All of that means I've been doing this for a long time. And I went into private practice when I retired from the bank. But because my time is limited, I will just direct my presentation to your specific questions. And the first one is the tangle title. And I'm sure as realtors, you probably run across that a lot, because in my practice now, about 90% of it is probate, and a large percent of that is tangle title. And that's primarily because in our community, generally when someone dies owning the home, the family does nothing. And I've heard people say that this is heir property and we don't want to risk it and we won't do anything. And here's what happens in Pennsylvania when you fail to proceed with probate if someone dies owning an asset, and generally that asset is the real estate. Pennsylvania inheritance taxes due 9 months after date of death, no matter when you probate. And if the time period between the death and the issue involving having to do something with the property is more than 21 years, you cannot even open probate without first filing a petition with the Orphans Court, which adds more fees, delays, and what that requires is that you prove to the court that all of the intestate heirs have been identified, and all of the intestate heirs have to join in with that petition. And what the intestate heirs means, and a lot of people confuse this issue because they will say, well, we're the only ones alive, so they think that the property then belongs to them. but you have to go back up to the owner, and every child that they've had, every child that they birth becomes an heir, whether they're living or deceased. Just because you die doesn't mean you lose your inheritance. So we've got to go, in many of these, we have to go back, create a family tree, and you go from the single owner property to sometimes over 20 heirs that have to be notified, and everybody has to be brought into the process and sign off on documents before we can move forward. So that's where tangled title starts. It also, and the tangled title is, a lot of times your client may not even realize it until they've already agreed to sell the property, because they might have transferred it into their names. And the title company underwriters now go back for multiple title transfers. Sometimes they will go all the way back to the 1960s or 70s. So when you and what they do is they will find something in that title where there's a deceased person, and you've either got to probate the estate and prove that inheritance tax has been paid, or the last one I had, there was an actual break in the chain of title. And what that means is that in this instance, I was representing the great grandson of the original owner who died in 1985. She, upon her death, she had one child. That child transferred title to herself, from her mother to herself, but the deed was from, she never probated her mother's estate. The deed she prepared in 1985 was a deed from herself to herself. And back then, no one was checking on the substance of a title. Today, she wouldn't be able to do that, because today, when you go to record a deed, they're going to look back and make sure that the chain of title is correct. So you can't just take someone's property and transfer it from yourself to yourself. But at any rate, his grandmother did that in 1985, and then she subsequently transferred it several times in trust for her children, and then ultimately in trust for her daughter. And then when the daughter died, the daughter inherited the property, and her son trying to sell it. This break in the chain of title, which occurred more than 21 years, would have required a whole court proceeding. And he had already gone through a register of wills, citation petitions, because his sibling wouldn't join in and agree to probate the mother's estate. So it was just a long process. And we were almost 2 years going on 3 years into dealing with this property, with him trying to probate his mother's estate and get everything together. I'm only telling you this story because this was the only account that we wound up going to settlement without having to file the petition to the orphans court, because the buyer and investor came up with the suggestion that we do an affidavit of heirship. Now, in all these years of practice, I have never heard of an affidavit of heirship, and I've never used it in the probate context. So he was fairly certain that he had a relationship with the title company and the underwriters, that if we did this affidavit of heirship, it might work. So I did research, and I ultimately did the affidavit of heirship, and he was able to sell the property without us going all the way back to 1985 to probate an estate just to sell the property. And I'm saying this to you realtors, because this is something you might want to discuss with title companies and underwriters if you ever have a break in the chain of title, because what that affidavit does is it allows us to prove the relationship of the heir. In other words, we had to go back and show from the birth certificate, death certificate, birth certificate, death certificate for each generation, to prove that for each transfer, or for the person now trying to sell it, there was a direct link from the original owner, who was his great grandmother. And with that affidavit, we were able to complete the sale. But under other normal circumstances, tangled title almost always deals with the fact that an inheritance tax return was not prepared, because either someone failed to probate the estate, or they probated the estate and did not file the inheritance tax return, and was not aware of it. And generally, if you do not file an inheritance tax return, you can expect within 2 or 3 years that the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue is going to file a judgment against the person, especially if there's property involved. And that judgment generally says $30,000 just based on the fact that you didn't file. So they came up with a number. And then I've had instances where I've had to just go back and do a correct inheritance tax return, or file the original inheritance tax return so that it could go through. Now, that inheritance tax return might even be required when the property is in the name of the person who is selling it. So, and that's what I had, I think, with one of your realtors here, where it was her property. She transferred it to her mother. Her mother transferred it back to her, but she transferred it back within 1 year of. She died one month short of it being a year. And in Pennsylvania, if you transfer title in contemplation of death, they assume for 1 year, then you will owe inheritance tax. So when the title company saw that the prior owner was deceased and that her death occurred within that 1 year period, they required inheritance tax. In that instance, you really don't go to probate. You file what is called a miscellaneous inheritance tax return, and that applies to non-probate assets only. So, and just to try to say this quickly, in Pennsylvania, a Pennsylvania inheritance tax is going to be due on all assets, whether they're probate or non-probate. Probate asset means that the asset is in the name of the deceased person. Non-probate asset means that the beneficiary received it automatically by contract, by title, or operation of law. In the case with the deed, the title had already been transferred to the daughter, so she owned it, but it was transferred within 1 year. In case of retirement monies, IRAs, 401ks, annuities, you've named the beneficiary with a contract with a third party, that's automatic. Or you can do it by title, where you have a bank account that says pay on death or in trust for. So that's the tangle title issue. The next question, I'm going through your list of questions. So, and anybody has a question, I guess we'll do that at the end, or you can jump in. But why you need a will would be so that you can determine who is going to be appointed your executor and who will be your beneficiaries. In most cases, I tell people that if the law is actually going to say who the heirs are for you, the urgency of a will may not be that important. Also, a will can be handwritten. You don't have to actually hire a lawyer to do your will. In Pennsylvania, you can have a handwritten will. So during the pandemic, as people were calling me in panic mode, I counseled everyone to put something in writing. And the elements are that it has to be, you have to affirm that this is your last will and testament. You have to indicate who you would like to be your beneficiary, who should be your executor, and then you have to sign it and date it. In complex family relationships, you really need a will. If you have no spouse and no children, you really need a will. But if you only have a spouse, the spouse will inherit. And if you have spouse and children, the spouse and children will inherit 50-50. But if you want anything different than that, you have to have a writing. And your writing is what determines who gets what. Some people think that if you have a will, you don't have to go to probate. You do have to go to probate. You have to go to probate no matter what. If something is in your name and you are no longer alive, probate has to occur to transfer title to that asset. So most of us have our bank account and our house. And the real estate market since this pandemic has been one of the issues that people have used to raise money and to finally sell something. So I've been very active with that kind of thing. And I think the probate process. Probate process is designed, is required to transfer title from a deceased person to the heirs. It's designed really as a means for creditors' claims to be processed. So a creditor, if someone dies with a long list of creditors, there's no venue through which they can collect their debt or lien or judgment without going through probate. So once you open probate, that's the venue through which creditors collect claims. That's why you're supposed to advertise that you've been appointed. And once you open an estate, now you have to answer to the creditors as they file their claims. If you advertise, you set a statutory limit time period of 1 year that a creditor has to file the claim. If they don't file it within that year or give you notice that the claim exists within a year, then it goes away. But if you're aware of the creditor and you don't pay them, then the personal representative is an executor under a will, and without a will, they're called an administrator. So by their title, you can always tell whether or not the person had a will or whether or not it's going by law. And if there is a will, you have to look at the terms, because very often the person may have altered it. They might have given everything to a neighbor who was a person who took care of them in their later years, which happens a lot, even with the house. But so executor means you're going to ask the person to look at the will. And since I'm running out of time almost, the last thing is what your board could do to help. I think when you have someone that's offering their house for sale or purchase, you want to go back and pull the prior deeds, because the title company is going to do all of this work. But if you're aware of some of the flaws or aware of what needs to be done, you can be proactive if you're trying to get your sale through. Because most often these matters come to me after the buyer has obtained a title company, and then they do a title search, and now everything is halted, and it takes us sometimes weeks or months to get the proper authorization to consummate the sale. I have one now that's been going on a year, and we still don't have it because we have so many people involved that we can't get everybody on the same page. And I can't file the petition with the orphans court until everyone agrees, and we still have people holding out. But nevertheless, if you do some due diligence and searching for, looking back through the prior titles, finding out how the person that you're represented obtained it. Was it a gift from a family member? Was that family member deceased? Did they die within that 1 year? Or things like of that nature. Sometimes you're never going to pick up the ones that go back far enough, but at least you would be able to make sure that if they handle the person's estate, that they properly file the inheritance tax return, and that they have an inheritance tax appraisement for you to provide to the title company. All right, I think I've answered all the questions, but anyone with a question, I'm happy to answer it.
We did have 2 questions in the chat box.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was, what if there are children outside of the marriage that are not mentioned in the will? Can they contest the will?
No, a person's, well, they won't be that successful. And when I do a will for someone that is going to disinherit, because you can disinherit your children, spouses are the only ones that might have a legal right to claim, to take a claim against the estate. If that person wasn't separated or anything like that. But you can disinherit children. And usually I suggest that people mention the fact that it is their intent to disinherit, or that they leave them something small. So I've had people that leave like $100 to a person. But as long as the will is valid, the children, any child can be disinherited. And courts are very reluctant to overturn something that a person has put in writing for their last will. So in order to have a will struck down, you have to meet 3 requirements, and all 3 have to be met before a judge will consider striking down a will. And they are so stringent that it's very rare that a person's will is going to be changed by the court.
Awesome, thank you. And
Okay, I just want to, Camille, so Gwen is going to be asking the panelists in the chat questions shortly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so that about wraps it up. I can tell you, I have always, since I left the bank, considered myself to be a resource to the community, because I really opened this practice because I realized the disparity between the people that I was working with at the banks, the high net worth clients, and coming home. I live in Mantua. I grew up in Mantua, still live in Mantua, and finding that everything was totally different in terms of the way we consumerism. We didn't have trust accounts. We weren't gifting stock certificates, and we basically just had the home and your bank account and your retirement. And I guess because of our history where our forefathers were not compensated for their labor, it's a lot of catching up to get to the point where you actually have wealth to be able to transfer it to the next generation. So I only say that to say that I am a resource to your community, and anybody with a question is free to ask. I don't charge for the information. I only charge when someone hires me to actually do a job. Okay. That's how I built my practice.
Okay. And if you get a chance, if you can put your contact information in the chat, that would also be helpful. But we're going to do the questions at the end. So, everybody hold on to the questions, write them down so you don't forget. Okay. So our next speaker is William Logan Fagans. He's the founder and president and CEO of Divine Enterprises. In 2008, Mr. Fagans recognized that there was a need for I'm sorry, I'm acting like I don't need these readers. Sorry. So Mr. Fagans recognized the need for individual empowerment where financial literacy is concerned. His mission to provide financial literacy services across disadvantaged communities and to promote quality of life via affordable healthcare solutions fueled his incorporation of Divine Insurance Group. Under his leadership, Divine has become an independent marketing organization specializing in various insurance services in the middle to low income market. Mr. Fagan maintains several designations and certificates in business management and healthcare reform. As he continued to work with healthcare officials and community leaders to help those in underserved communities, Mr. Fagan turned his attention to learning the disparities and disabilities within our senior population. In 2009, Mr. Fagans incorporated Senior Advocate Outreach Program, a nonprofit corporation and recognized as the 501c3 by the Internal Revenue Service. Designed to uplift seniors and disabilities and to provide health care, educational services. The nonprofit enhances the awareness of seniors of the availability of health care and home support services currently provided by the federal, state, and local government agencies to which they are entitled. Mr. Fagans, along with the staff and volunteers, service well over 5,000 seniors in the Philadelphia metropolitan area. Mr. Fagans is equipped with over 10 years of experience in working with major corporations, nonprofits, and government entities to oversee outreach programs, activities for international health advocacy coalitions. His strong relationship with local and national constituents, along with his position as ambassador for the Philadelphia Corporation of Aging Board of Directors Clergy Division, enable him to increase the involvement and visibility of underprivileged communities in health policy issues. The Divine Insurance Group, known as DIG, is an independent marketing specializes in various insurances in the middle to low income market. The mission is to empower advocacy and financial literacy services across community to assess their needs and providing affordable solutions that meet their budgets while maintaining quality care for individuals and loved ones. Divine Insurance Group is licensed contracted brokerage firm providing quality services to seniors, disabled, and low-income citizens. Mr. Fagans also had a radio show on Word is where I found him. So with no further ado, Mr. Fagans, you're on.
Thank you, Gwen. Thank you for having me on. And thank you, Tony and Antoinette, everyone for having me on today. I really appreciate it. The mission right now is to is really end the life planning. Is something that we were talking about, and Ms. Stoner is talking about, of just prevention. And that's services that are needed, like living wills, life insurance, and protecting our citizens from predatory life insurance. And there's a lot of predatory life insurance. I would say over 90% of it that are sold in the mail to our seniors are predatory life insurance, where 96% of those policies don't pay out. So that creates a problem, a generational problem, because what we are experiencing in the last 16 years of me doing this is what I'm experiencing is a trend of people dying, not having adequate life insurance, okay, not having living wills that are needed, okay, and then going into probate, for their heirs. And this system has been going on for, I guess, generations now, and it's just time to put a stop to it. So what we do is we do a survey on our clients, any clients, it could be anyone in the country, service everyone in the country, and we ask them certain key points to see how their end of life planning is. Is it set up? Is their funeral planning set up? And what I found out is that I needed to put together for life insurance agents, there was a void in the market in 2014. And I put together a 501c6, which is a membership-driven nonprofit called the Final Expense Planning Specialist Association. What it was is a school we put together for life insurance agents to get certified to understand the ins and outs of end-of-life planning. That's including living wills, funeral planning, negotiations with funeral directors, working with licensed funeral directors, working with the National Funeral Directors Association and partnering with another organization called Funeral Wise, and having the ability for clients to find advisors anywhere in the country that's with our membership. Right now, we have over 5,000 members, okay, and I'm the co-owner of the Final Expense Planning Specialists Association. So I developed it in 2014. I put it together in 2015, and now I'm pending accreditation. It's going to be a duly accredited school, actually, for all licensed agents in the country. So we're based in Germantown. We also are based in Sewell, New Jersey as well. So we have 2 offices. Okay, so and my job is to teach, life insurance agents to do surveys on clients in the inner cities to help protect each and every client one by one by helping them get out of predatory life insurance, by educating the consumer and the family member in the home, okay, to have prevention. And the prevention is, again, the 3 durables in the Last Testament. So they have a living will. They have better life insurance, and we actually handle the life insurance claims. So I give you an example. This week, we get the death certificates. We'll negotiate with the funeral directors because we absolutely know their policies that they have to follow federally. Okay, so they can't sell them a funeral for $20,000 where it could have cost $8,000 on average, okay, just because they have a life insurance policy that they're signing over to the funeral home. So we protect them. We're an advocate for that. So we protect them from that as well. But in addition to that, we work with funeral directors as well, and helping their clients as well there too, and their constituents that they have there get life insurance policies as well, non-predatory life insurance policies, so they can pass down some type of wealth and keep, some monies, not just everything going to the funeral, but they can actually keep some monies to pass it down for probate or for, or to protect them with probate. We also hired lawyers on staff that we send out referrals to for a medical malpractice, which we bump into. We see as a certified end-of-life planner like myself, we see death certificates, and because we have done our clients' life insurance, we will notice that sometimes that the clients would die, and on their death certificates, the hospital would absolutely lie on there. It's a shame that this happens. This is real. Okay, so we're there at time of death. I had a client lived around the corner on Hansberry Street, right here in Germantown. Her husband died, and they sent the husband back home. He had a stomach issue. She went in a hospital. I'm not going to say a hospital thing, but she went into a hospital, and her husband died. And it's because a nurse pulled down, tried to suck some fluids out his stomach, actually punctured his lung. On the death certificate in red, it said he died from heart disease. He did not die from heart disease. So I had to send that off to an attorney. These are the things, because I'm doing that, then I'm doing the life insurance claim, you see? Then I'm working with a funeral home. So we have to deal with all of that. So I'm here in the middle protecting our clients, you know, that happens. And this all has to still deal with real estate, because at the end of the day, a lot of our clients that we see, they believe their heirs can just pass it down without skipping probate. So, and that becomes a challenge to our mission of what we're trying to do, is educate the population services that they're entitled to, such as comprehensive living wills, such as residential trust if they're needed for one, or living trust. So we try to advocate that for their heirs as well, to pay for those services. Our living wills, they're free. We do it for them. We archive it. We become their agent, you know, as well. We put their life insurance in there. We do the 3 durables, the medical, the durable, and the financial, to protect them, because we know what happens when they go in a hospital, and that they need these documents. Okay. We work with their beneficiaries, whoever their beneficiaries are. We educate them about getting trust, or getting a living will for themselves, or getting life insurance for themselves as well. Also working with them to do their parents' you know, funeral planning for them. So we help assist them in as well. So these are the multitudes of services that we do here, right here in the Germantown area. And I will put my website up and phone number that anyone could call us. Our services are totally free. There's no cost. So I just want to make note of that. And as I was driving, I was at Senator Anthony Williams. They had an anti-violent rally outside of ShopRite, right there on Parkside. So I was there, that's where I was earlier. So I had to come here. But so there's a lot of things. I speak to a lot of leaders, churches, organizations, okay, about end of life planning and what prevention tactics that we can use at our disposal to help prevent a lot of this, so we can pass down some generational wealth without being taxed, and owning some assets, you know, that we need to own. But there's some things that we could prevent all of this from happening. The ins and outs of it. But I see people before they die, and after they die. And there's a major problem that's going on out here of if that we could prevent a lot of this if we just get our paperwork right. We just educate, you know, our consumers and our constituents, especially our seniors. Okay. And they're just not properly prepared to die. I hate to say this, but they're not prepared to die. It becomes more of a mess. Dying if you have predatory life insurance, dealing with funeral homes, and then you have to deal with, you know, probate as well for the title of the home. So this circle is a mess that I experienced in the last 16 years to try to prevent with some prevention that can happen. And I can see if we all just work together, we could prevent a lot of this for people in our community from this happening, because death, you never know when you die. But one thing you can do while you're living is protect yourself, your family, and prevent a nightmare and not leave a mess to your heirs. And that's the issue that I experience all the time. So I just want to thank you guys for letting me do my little spill. And that's what we do here at the Final Expense Planning Specialists Association. I will put my website and phone number, and you guys can contact us if you have any questions or in need of any services.
Okay. Yeah, there are several questions. Let's start with Deborah. I think she was the first one to ask the question. Deborah, do you still have a question? She might have stepped away. So let's go to the next question. Next question is, why do I need a trust and what is it? Revocable or irrevocable? Uh-oh, Miss Olivia, you need to take yourself off mute.
Okay, there.
There you go.
I gotta get used to this stuff. I tell you, when you get old, you gotta figure out things. Anyway, okay. So in the area of real estate, there is the terminology of a trust. So there's a true trust and a not real trust. So if you're talking about real estate, people, you might find that a lot of the real estate deeds say parent in trust for and children or something like that. It makes it seem like there's a trust account, but it's not a true trust. It's just titling that allows a parent to hold ownership in the property for the benefit of their children. So upon death, the title to the property automatically vests in the name of whoever the beneficiaries are. That's a non-probate asset. It does not go through probate, but you still owe inheritance tax on the transfer because Pennsylvania charges inheritance tax if anything transfers from a person who is deceased to a living person. Non-probate still taxable. Now to get into the true trust and the what I learned during my 23 years at the bank, and I learned how our counterparts actually acquired and amassed all this money and then put it in vehicles where it became a generational legacy that goes from generation to generation to generation. So in my mind, the trust needs to have investable dollars and enough to have an actual corporate trustee manage it, because the elements of a trust are that you have the creator of the trust, the trustor, you have the trustee who is managing the money, and then you have the beneficiary. And then wrapped all around there are lots of complex income tax requirements and regulations and things like that. And so when I have a presentation that I do that's called The Art of Creating Generational Wealth, where I kind of explain how this whole trust thing works. But in a nutshell, when I think of trust, I think of creating a legacy that will last for hundreds of years to support beneficiaries that you will never, your heirs who you will never meet. So in order to do that, you need to have enough investable dollars to make that happen. Whereas today, a lot of people are just buying real estate and putting it into a trust or creating a trust. And then I find this a lot because you had these trust mill people selling trusts and the whole plan for like $2,000, where they would take their retirement monies and transfer that into a trust and then transfer their home into a trust. And then upon their death, the trust terminates. So the whole objective of creating a trust was meaningless, because why create a trust and pay all this money to create it and then have it terminate upon death? So if you do not have a large amount of wealth to transfer, a trust might not be the proper vehicle for you, because in my mind, the legal fee that you're going to pay is maybe $2, $3, $4. Some people pay $5,000 to create this thing, and it should be designed to last for multiple generations so that your heirs are born into the trust and they become trust beneficiaries. And each trust is different and is customized to your own desire. I did one for one of our PNC clients after I left the bank, and he had the funds to create the trust, and he did it just for his children's education. And another client did it for homeowner and education. And his trust was revocable. And later in life, his daughter came down with some sort of illness where medical needs were needed to be addressed, and he was able to amend it. So a revocable trust allows you to amend an existing trust. A revocable trust is taxable upon your death. So upon your death, whatever the value of that trust is, you're going to pay inheritance tax on it, even though Susie Orman talks this good game and to my children, even this whole trust thing. But if you don't have, if you can't make it large enough to make it continue, and it's going to terminate after your death, what is the point? Here's the other thing I don't suggest that people do, because I like to have what I've seen them do, have multiple levels of inheritance. So your retirement accounts, your 401k, an annuity, and all those things. A lot of people think about doing a trust and putting everything in it, putting in their retirement. But if you do that upon your death, your 401k, your retirement plan is automatically income taxable, the whole thing, as opposed to allowing your beneficiary to roll it over, stretch it out for their retirement, and only pay income tax as you withdraw. And then an irrevocable trust is totally not taxable, but irrevocability means that you can't make any changes to it. Generally, it's an irrevocable trust is designed where you're actually gifting the money to your, let's say, your children. And so during your life, and this is how I've seen it done, the federal government allows you to make gifts every year without paying a gift tax, because in our tax code, if you're making gifts, you're going to pay income tax if they exceed a certain amount. So this year, if you give someone over 15,000, then you have to report it as a gift tax, and gift taxing accumulates. So what they would do is every year they make the gift tax minimum, transfer that into a trust for their children. So you create a children's trust. Every year you transfer the 15,000. And if you have 2 children and 2 parents, each parent can do the same thing for each child. And this is how they get money out of their taxable pockets, so they don't pay. And at the end of the day, they're not paying a state tax, federal, or and Pennsylvania is the state of Pennsylvania is inheritance tax, but the federal government charges estate tax. And the estate tax, while it used to be, under Obama inherited it, where you could transfer 3.5 million without an estate tax to the federal government, under the prior administration, he increased it to 24 million, so that each spouse, 12 million each, could, and if a spouse didn't use theirs, the surviving spouse could use the combined, which really bumped it up to 24 million. So they could transfer 24 million, no estate tax, and this is using the trust vehicle. And now, and with all the tax breaks and all, it just breaks my heart that they now are just having this whole argument over the fact that there's no money, but they practically bankrupt this state by the country, by all of the tax laws that favored the wealthy and allowed them to get away without paying any tax. And then we're when you're on the totem pole where we are, there's no way to not pay the tax. So we're hit with tax all the way. So if you create a irrevocable trust, you pay the tax on making the gift. So when you make the gift into the trust, you're going to pay a tax for that transfer. But then irrevocable means you do not own it. You can't pull any strings. You can't receive any benefits. It's irrevocable. It belongs to someone else. Revocable means you control everything during your life as if it were still your asset. But upon your death, it's non-probate and it automatically transfers to your heirs. So it avoids probate. That's all a revocable trust does. Did that answer your question? There's a whole lot. It's a complex area, but
Yeah.
When Deborah is back, just so you know.
Okay. Yeah. Deborah, your question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm Deborah Ann Spence. I'm with Fierce Realty Corp. and broker owner. Thank you to my Fierce agents for joining the call, Gabriella, Falaji, Tiff, Fenton, and so on. And my question is that, I as a brokerage, we have agents that specialize in distressed properties in Philadelphia, and we come across a lot of fraud, or title companies that flag it as fraud if there's a family that just doesn't know how to do all of this and makes mistakes. And so that's an issue, and I don't know how to get past that. But there's one case that I'm dealing with right now, one client, the family, the person died in 2000, and then someone sold the property in 2008, like signed the person that died's name on the deed and sold it to my client. My client is in the process of selling it to someone else, and the title search is done. They flagged it as a fraudulent deed, and now so we're trying to untangle, and if that's a word, like and go back to the beginning, right, and find the estate of this person, track her family members, and get them to sign an affidavit stating that they knew that they sold this property and that my client is the current owner. And that's hard.
Yeah, that is a mess
to get around that.
Okay, so here's the problem. Your because there was so much fraud in this city going on, the recorder of deeds now has things in place to try to address that. But that was happening very frequently, and very often the real owner never knew that the title to their property was taken. So, but when that person sold it to your client, the person that took it, and a lot of times they're not, the sale even occurs from maybe a second or third transfer, because what they do is they do a fraudulent deed and fraudulently become the owner. Then they flip it again, and then they legitimately sell it, maybe along the chain. And your client hopefully has title insurance. And
no title insurance. Went to the notary on the corner. You know, he's Hispanic, and they believe, you know, we just shake hands. Well, he believes anyway. We shake hands, you know, we make a deal, we go to the notary and get it signed. And I'm telling him, like, well, you don't have any insurance. So not only that, they're saying that he owes like 3 mortgages back from 1960.
Because that's what the frauder gets title and then gets a mortgage and then flips it again. And so now you've got this property because the debt runs with the land. It doesn't matter who took it out.
Yeah.
And so that is, I don't know how your client is going to overcome that, because trying to get the family of the deceased person, because now you've got the original owner. Well, hopefully maybe the transfer happened when the original owner was alive.
No, she was dead. She was dead for 8 years, but they signed that the estate of sold it to this person who then sold it to my client. But she was already dead, so there was no way.
That definitely is fraud if the estate was never opened. And here's the thing: see, the recorder of deeds now requires documentation for everything. Mm-hmm. And so you can't file a deed from an estate without your letters of appointment. So that, I guess when that deed was recorded,
it was in 2008.
It was fraudulently signed, or was there a real estate opened? So if you had come to me, I would start by going, because that deed would have to recite the appointment from the Register of Wills and give a will number. So the first thing you'd want to do is pull the file, go back, and so look at your deed and see what actual documentation they filed, and then you pull that file, and that will tell you who went to the Register of Wills to get letters and what they told Register of Wills at that point, because the Register of Wills only knows what you tell them. And it
was all lies. We know it was all lies, but I mean, how does that help my client now? Is he
well? You got to start with that, and whoever did. So the person that transferred it from because they got to show a photo ID to open the estate, and they've got to have the death certificate. They've got to have documentation. So the problem of transferring title started with the person that represented themselves as the administrator or executor of the estate.
Yes.
Okay.
That's where you have to start, and then you go to, and if that person got a loan, then it might require litigation, but you need like a real estate attorney to litigate. I do not do litigation. I'm strictly administrative, but I can help a litigator.
No, I appreciate that. I was just hoping it was a workaround, but they did hire an attorney.
Yeah, and they got to know
you. I appreciate it.
I understand the dynamics if the litigator isn't a specialty, it doesn't have experience in this area, because litigation is totally different.
Yeah.
And I can't help you with litigation, but I can tell the litigator how to be successful. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. We have 2 more questions, and then we're gonna move on. How do you
wait, let me interrupt you. If you scroll up to the top, there's been questions. You should have about 6 or 7 questions in there.
Yeah, I think I got most of them. Yeah. Well, there was a general question of, do the laws change from state to state, which is yes.
Yes. Every jurisdiction is different. Mm-hmm. And you have to probate in each jurisdiction. So a person's resident might be in Pennsylvania, and so that's their primary probate. But if they have inherited or own property in other states, once you probate in their state of residence, you do an ancillary probate in each jurisdiction where property is owned, and each jurisdiction is different. I'm doing that now with my mother's estate in South Carolina, and they handle things completely differently.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to get to you, Stacy. I realized your hand was up a while ago, but let me get these two questions for Mr. Fagans. How do you negotiate with a funeral home, and how do you choose which insurance company to use, and what is a sign of predatory insurance?
Okay, so how do we negotiate with the funeral home? Typically, if there are clients and we typically have them with our life insurance, we negotiate because we're the first person that they're going to contact. We get notifications if we have deaths. Okay, so example, I'll contact the beneficiary, okay, and to fill a death claim out, okay. If it's before 2 years, then I'll help them get the medical records that's needed. Okay. After 2 years, then we just need the death certificate from their chosen funeral home. Okay. And upon that, depends on what funeral home it is, then we will actually contact the funeral home to find out if they needed, how much would a traditional on average be, or cremation would be. Okay. And then from them picking out the items is something that I will go over with the beneficiary with, so they don't have to overspend. Okay, if they selling them a casket for $2,000, we can get them a Bateman casket for $700, and by law they have to accept that. Okay, so we have the beneficiary can pay that up front if they choose to. Okay, and they can drop ship it to the funeral home, so they're saving money with items. Okay, also the funeral service itself on average is about $1,200 to $1,500. Okay, just for the service. Okay, sometimes they'll tip it up to $2,500. We'll say no, that's you've gone over a little bit too much. We're going to negotiate that. So on average, we'll save them thousands of dollars. Okay, I can't say the names of them, but some of them will try to beef it up to $12,000, and I kind of knock it down to $7,400 for a traditional, so we can save that money. Also, we don't want to assign life insurance policies over to funeral homes. Okay, I could wire the money over. Okay, so we become a conduit in between the funeral home and the insurance. Okay, so that's a protection that's not there, because the abuse that happens with the life insurance policies, what they'll do is they'll sign them over to the funeral home, and the funeral home will charge them in interest. Okay, waiting for that policy to pay out. They can snail mail that policy. Okay, which is horrible. So they can charge them an interest, okay, a reoccurring interest rate on them on a daily, which is insane. Okay, but they do this. Okay, so they'll try to soak up and sponge up as much as the death benefit that they can until the policy is paid out. Okay, and we don't want that. So we want to kind of wire the money to them. Okay, and this is upon a proper claim that's been submitted, okay, to the insurance company. All right.
That's a whole lot of work for free.
No, but it's what we do for as funeral planning go. It's not hard. You know, that's why we have a curriculum and a course to take our insurance agents to do this. Okay, so they know the proper procedures. But if you notice that no one understands this, because that gap, okay, is not taught. It's just give your funeral director your insurance policy. That's it. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's bad. Okay, because what happens is you gave them all the power at time of need when you're grieving. Okay, you're not thinking about the home either. All right, so what happens is you're like, okay, well, as long as I have the key, I own the home, and it's like, no, you got to take care of the funeral first, and then we can get to, because if there's no spouse, then you're going to be right in probate, right away, because the children are probably the ones taking care of it. And to get to predatory life insurance, yeah, anything that they sell in the mail or on TV typically has a 2-year wait, so you don't have full death benefit. Okay, some of these policies end at age 80, so they don't know, and 96% of these policies don't pay out. Okay, so we're not educated on what is called first day coverage. Okay, so we end up waiting 2 years just to have coverage, and all they do is just pay the premiums back, that you paid into. And that doesn't help if someone were to pass, due to, let's say, COVID or something. That becomes a problem. Okay, there is a way how to get money too for death benefit out of a COVID death as well. We do talk about that as well, but that takes a while. I mean, you're going to need coverage right away if you don't, unless you have some money in the bank to pay the funeral home. So the funeral home is looking for cash or a policy that's going to pay out, which would be first day. So once a claim is approved, a policy can be paid out in 24 hours. Okay. I mean, a claim can be shot over to a funeral home and whatever's left can be hit to the beneficiary. So we protect them in between that. And that's what people want, advocates, you know. And if I'm not here, it's a 1-800 number that they can call to actually do it for them. So if I'm not here to do it, they can call a 1-800 number and we have somebody walk them through that. That's why we do the funeral planning for them, so we can already see what happened. But when we get a death claim that comes to us, either in the mail or via email, you know, or a phone call, we know the right procedures to go through to help do the claim. We already know the funeral home that they're going to work with. We can contact them or the beneficiary, but typically we contact the beneficiary and do everything. If we're getting the medical records or if we're getting a death certificate, you know, we're working hands-on with that beneficiary to do a proper claim. But luckily, thank God that consumer that we worked with actually has a living will, okay, or the 3 durables in the last testament, you know, prior to all of that, so they can name their executor of their estate. See, it's already prior done, you know, but we try to protect them again. And Ms. Stoner is great at, you know, educate everyone on these trusts because it's needed, especially these homes that, you know, they're going up, all this gentrification that's going on. They can't afford to pay that probate. They can't afford to even wait months, you know, to even get a hearing. So we're in between that as a nonprofit because we deal with it on a daily. I mean, this is every day. And we see people when they die and a lot of it, when they're dying in a hospital, I hate to say it, it's a lot of medical malpractice. The hospitals do not want to take ownership for wrongful deaths. I'm telling you guys, they don't. We see it on the death certificate. I was like, there's no way. Why? Because we can see through their medical information bureau what prior elements and conditions that they have. So how can you die all of a sudden? You had heart disease, but you never had it. All of a sudden you go in the hospital, you die, you had heart disease. When did that? So these are the things that are happening. And I'm like, how did that happen? I'm just dealing with a claim with this now. So it's going to take time. Now we got the policy approved, but because this person never had heart disease. And the reason why we got the policy approved, we would have never got it approved that he had heart disease prior, is because their medical information bureau that we checked never had an indication or drugs or even the doctors had that. So I had to get the medical records to show that this client never had heart disease. But on the death certificate said he died from heart disease. No, he died from a punctured lung, from the nurse puncturing the lung, going inside his mouth to grab the fluids that was in his stomach. So I know the game. So his wife definitely has a case. I sent it to one of our attorneys. This is what I mean. Now, luckily we got to him because he had predatory life insurance. Okay, prior to that, I got him out of that and put them on first day coverage. This would have never got paid, but luckily I did it within the first 2 years because I had to get the medical records. So the hospital wanted to charge almost $60 to get the medical records. I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I should have had you 10 years ago when my dad died. I mean, the way they did that whole thing, the insurance companies, it was ridiculous, and it was way above my head. So yeah, definitely.
This is every day. This is real life, and we deal with it. And that's why we need to collectively come together, you know, with Ms. Stoner and a bunch of us to get this out here so we can protect from this type of abuse. And so it's all the way around. I'm not saying funeral directors are bad. I'm just saying at the time of need that we need to come together because the insurance companies, dealing with the hospitals, dealing with the funeral directors, and then dealing with probate is all one educational void, a lack of knowledge that we don't have that we need to bring together, that we all need to have.
Right. And we need to have this beforehand, not when out because your loved one is in passing away. Okay, there was 2 people. Stacy, did you still have a question? Unmute yourself.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. This is fabulous. I do have an issue right now, Miss Olivia. My customer currently is purchasing a house. He was selling his grandmother's home. He owned his grandmother's home. The grandmother passed away, but signed the will 5 years ago to him. The title company said the signature on her original deed 30 years ago does not match the letter 5 years ago. The lady is older, so her signature doesn't match. So this title company does not feel comfortable with saying that, or releasing, or saying he's the owner of this house. So he can't sell the house, and he doesn't know what route to go now.
Take yourself off of mute, Miss Olivia. Can you unmute her?
Okay, I got it.
there
Yeah,
you go.
okay. Yeah, because I was automatically muted by this. Anyway, all right. So here's the issue. The title company has nothing to do with the will. That's not their venue. The will has to be probated. And once it goes through probate, the Register of Wills issued a letter testamentaries appointing the executor. And then it's the executor's job to transfer title to the beneficiary. So from your scenario, it looks like he's trying to use the will to say that he's the owner of the property as opposed to his name being on the property. But the title company, it's the Register of Wills' responsibility to accept a will for probate. Title company has nothing to do with that. They're only concerned about whether or not inheritance tax has been paid. Mm-hmm. So, and once a will is presented for probate, if there are family members that might object to the fact that this was fraud and that's not her signature or this, that, and the other, then they have to file a claim in orphans court to litigate the whole validity of the will. But the question of a signature on a will should not fall under the underwriters of a title company, because when you sell the property and they go back and they see that an estate has been probated, they usually pull the file. But that's not their issue, whether that will is valid. The only issue is whether it was accepted by the Register of Wills. The Register of Wills determines whether or not the will is valid.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so he, from your situation, maybe he didn't probate her estate.
I need to find out.
Yeah, and once he's probated her estate, he has letters testamentary, and then the title company is going to look at the will to see who inherited the property. But they should have nothing to do with whether or not that signature was signed with an X, because you can make it by mark. If a person can't really sign, you can sign a document just by making a mark. So yeah, that something is missing in the facts that you've given me there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for your information.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, we have 3 people with their hands raised, and then
Gwen, Gabriella, she was on for a while, and
yeah,
there's still some questions.
I have her. We have three questions, and then we're gonna let Chris tell you guys a little bit of information. So we have Gabriella, then Darlene, and then Yvette.
Hello guys, how are you? Thank you so much for inviting us. I'm with Fierce Realty Corp based right out of Philadelphia. I do have a few questions and I have them written down, so I don't mind waiting till the speakers, just saying.
Say that, you went out for a second. Say that again.
Pardon me. I said I actually have a few questions and I wouldn't mind waiting till the end because I have about 4 questions. So I wouldn't mind letting the speakers speak, and then, I could ask my questions.
Yeah, and then at the end, you can stay on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Great job for everyone, by the way. Thank you.
Thanks. So then we have Darlene.
Hi. I'm running around today, but I just wanted to stress the importance that the lawyer was talking about as far as like the medical information and how they kind of treat people. And my daughter, she's like a real advocate at times. She recently, and this is someone living that I think she's probably in her 20s, but she went to one of these medical outpatient centers, and she had a growth underneath her arm, which they cut out and didn't explain to her very well. And my daughter just got her nursing license. So she said her friend called her crying, was in a lot of pain. They put in the prescription for pain medicine that was in 4 hours away. So she said she was just going to talk to the facility on the phone, but there were so many things that had gone wrong that she went up there and had a discussion with them and let them know that this is systematic for especially Black females, that they don't treat their pain and they don't explain things to them clearly. So the girl had never signed off on having this growth cut out. And she was in excruciating pain, didn't have any pain meds, lived by herself. And there was an open wound that they sent her home with underneath her dominant arm and said she needed to dress it every day, which she couldn't. And when my daughter finished with them, they were not going to charge her, and they told her she could come back and I guess the manager would change the dressing every day. Then she went to a dermatologist, and the dermatologist said they should have never cut it out. So, but the girl was in so much pain and she had issues. She was like, I don't want to get anyone in trouble. I just need help for, this to stop. So if you don't have an advocate, then you don't understand. And my daughter hasn't been in that field very long. She has done customer service for insurance. But if she wasn't there, I'm just thinking probably this girl has a case, because they never should have cut it out. My daughter's like, Mom, just through my research, I knew what she had. I don't understand why they couldn't. So it's great that we're having this today. And if you can have an advocate in areas that you don't understand, you probably will fare better. So thank you for letting me speak.
Okay. Bill, do you have, does your corporation does have an advocacy for younger people as well as the elderly?
Yes, for financial literacy for both elements. I do the speaking on both sides. For the elderly, definitely at churches and other organizations, for prevention with surveys, to benefits that they're entitled to. As a matter of fact, we have, just speaking on the elderly, we enrolled a new program for people that have Medicare and Medicaid. There's a certain carrier that's given a cash card of $45 a month. Now, what that does is we take that $45 in January and we could do pre-needs for people who aren't uninsurable, with local funeral homes, for that $45. Or if they get first day coverage, then we can get them life insurance, and we handle, their life insurance, of course, anyway, as advocates with what we do here. So that helps protect them of something that they're entitled to. So basically, we got the government paying for them to have a pre-needs or life insurance, through a particular carrier. So that's the first thing that we're doing in 2022, a new initiative for that to happen. As far as the younger people, we advocate for them to get term, insurance, have a lot of term insurance that doesn't cost a lot of money. And they could take 1% of that money inside their policy, especially with a certain carrier that we have, that can go towards any 501c3. And that's not in their death benefit. That's from the company as well. We advocate for these type of policies, term policies for them, because of the massive violence that's going on out here. That's just, it's just unavoidable, some catastrophes that happen. And also we have policies for children as well, from ages 0 to 25. It's only $25 a year, and it gives you $20,000 in coverage. We also add SAGE tuition college scholarships to, that's for certain colleges that's in the SAGE program. If you guys heard of it, it's out of Dr. Johnson and Wharton Business School. Been working with him for years. We actually give parents these type of points for college students under 17 to use for different colleges like Drexel and Widener and other colleges that are in the area that participate. So we educate them on that too, to help them with college expenses as well. So those financial literacy components, we have both. So if anybody wants me to speak or come out, we can speak on both of them. they're very valuable. Okay, it's no cost to it. Again, we get our money from the federal government, from the insurance company. So don't worry about how we're, funded. Just worry about the education that we're given, because it's needed out here. We bump into people who are just totally uneducated, just don't have the knowledge when it comes to, life insurance, and not just life insurance, just in general, but just retirement planning that I do. I have a book of retirement planning. So we do that as well for younger people, or I would say our, middle class, that we have as well, is looking for retirement planning. So from younger youth, from young adults as well, getting term policies, just on them that are very affordable, and just having that in place. And then for our elderly, having something in place, or low income, we have something in place for them that they can use as well. That'd be no cost for them. So yes, we have a variety of different components to do something.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna have to talk, because I was born in 1969, and I went to see if I could borrow against my insurance that my mom's been paying with Gerber, and they were like, "Oh, it's $3,000." I'm like, something went wrong. I'm like, she paid more than that in my premium. So yeah, we got to figure that thing out. So Yvette, let's go to your question, and then we're gonna let Chris talk.
Okay, thank you. My question is for Ms. Stoner. Going back to the wills, I know that once a person passes, the will goes to probate, or it has to be placed into probate. But my question is, if you have an irrevocable trust, does that take care of everything?
It takes care of what is in the trust.
Just what's in the trust.
What is in the trust. And I've had people that created trusts and then never transferred anything into it. So the family comes to me with this big volume of stuff, and they have a trust in there. And so then we look for assets that are titled in the trust. The way you fund a trust is by transferring the assets, because the trust is just a piece of paper. To get an asset into the trust, you actually have to transfer title to an asset into the title of the trust. So if it's going to be a brokerage account for your investment portfolio, you change that. You take the company has to have a copy of your trust, and then the title becomes the Jane Doe Trust dated such and such. If it's going to be the house, then you transfer title to real estate into the Jane Doe Trust dated whatever. So at the time of death, whatever is in that trust is what gets transferred automatically as a non-probate asset. If it was revocable during the person's life and became irrevocable after their death, because if the creator is no longer living and it was revocable, then it is now irrevocable because they're not here to make any changes. So that's going to be a taxable transfer, and you pay inheritance tax on it, but it does not go through probate. If it was created as an irrevocable trust, then the person gave it away at the point that they created it. So they no longer own it. So there's nothing to go through probate for them. And now their heirs are beneficiaries of an asset where they can receive income and principal, probably for health maintenance support or whatever, that they're just born into. And this is how our kind of counterparts created irrevocable trusts, either that they were revocable when they were alive and they funded them, or either they gifted them during life and it was created at that point. But the beneficiaries of an irrevocable trust are never taxed on that transfer. The only tax impact is going to be income. For the income that they actually receive, they will pay income tax, but never a federal estate tax for the real wealthy, or a state inheritance tax on that level. So now you're just born into wealth where you receive, income that you're entitled to just because of who you are.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so I just wanted to go back before you spoke, Chris. Originally, we were supposed to have the wills,
Register of will.
Register of Wills come on and talk, and she had a scheduling conflict, so she wasn't able to make it. So we want to thank Miss Olivia for filling in for her, and we're kind of, I don't want to say we're glad that she couldn't make it, but Miss Olivia has given us a whole new outlook on what's going on. So God did what He did. So
I'm glad to be here. Yeah. That's
yes.
great.
So, and the other thing is that there's some, I don't want to say a bill, but originally someone talked to us about a bill going through that they wanted the realtors community to get behind to address these things at the closing table, or at least somewhere in the agreement of sale, like we do with insurance or inspections. You know, you don't have to have an inspection, but we're going to tell you why you need one. So wouldn't that be great if we told people you don't have to have a will, you don't have to have a trust, you don't have to have life insurance, but here's why you need one. Because our community isn't getting the information that other communities get. Brown and black people think about this stuff when people are starting to die, and it needs to happen sooner. So if it can happen with our first time home buyers, that would be great. But if we can do this as realtors, just, you know, given this extra two people with these things that we can offer them, you know, we offer them handyman, we offer them locksmiths to change the locks as soon as they close. Why can't we offer these services to our clients so that they can be more educated and they can take that to their family and friends, and we're going to get educated one way or another. So with that being said, we'll let Chris talk about NAREB and PMBR.
Great, thank you so much. This was a fantastic seminar, virtual seminar. I think that we need to discuss with the board about probably making this one of our possible signature events, because I think it's so necessary, as you heard from many of the real estate professionals that were asking questions. I think especially in the African-American community where these things are not taking place, and we definitely need more information with regards to that. I would like to thank Olivia Stoner, attorney Olivia Stoner, and also William Fagans for stepping in and really making this a wonderful and valuable virtual seminar. It was just fantastic, and I learned a lot of things with regards to just estates, wills, trusts, and all of those things. I'm just going to go down a list real quick and just thank some folks real quick before I move on. I want to thank Camille Mormon, who helped us with the technology part of this, putting all of this together. She is from the Delaware Raid chapter, and I want to thank her for that. And I also want to just thank some of the people that are also on here. Annette Collier, who is our vice president of the board, helped put everything together. Haria Elashari, who is not on, she is our treasurer. Gwen Richardson, who is our assistant secretary and also head of Women's Council. She's going to talk a little bit more about that. Will Bracey, who is our membership person. Darlene Meekins, who is our assistant treasurer and former president of the Philadelphia Metropolitan Board of Realtors. And Yvette Biggs, who is our regional vice president. She's also going to come on. She's handling the region. Tony Johnson, who is also a part of the committee. She is a director. And Herb Brockington, who is not on the call, he's a director as well. And I'm going to thank those folks for being a part of this. Also, Keisha Vaughn, who is on our call. She's the president of RAID in New Jersey. I mean, in Delaware. I want to thank her as well for being a part of this. We are Philadelphia Metropolitan Board of Realtors and RAID are part of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. We are the largest and oldest African-American trade organization that deals with real estate issues from the life. And so we are the local, we are the people that are on the ground here in this particular region that handle these type of issues. And so the reason why we're called realtors is because in the 1940s, African Americans were not allowed to be realtors. And so we had to create a name for ourselves and create a branding image for ourselves. And realtors is the name that they chose, and it stuck. So you will see on many of our business cards, many of our stationery, realtors/realtors. And that's what it really is about. We have come out of the Brown versus Board education movement, the civil rights movement, and the fair housing movement because we really espouse democracy in housing. We want to make sure that African Americans get a fair shake, people of color get a fair shake in the things that they're doing with regards to acquiring housing and real estate, which has been at the foreground of our wealth building. I mean, without that, we really have no wealth. I mean, real estate has been it. And I tell people all the time, God stopped making land a long time ago. You should buy some, you should get some, you should own some. And those are the type of things that we are talking about both at PMBR and RAID. We want to encourage you to become a member. And so many people talk about, well, you know, I'm a member of my kind of greater association other than the association dealing with people of color. So for us, it would be GPAR, which is the Greater Philadelphia Association of Realtors. And there's a membership fee for that, but there's also a membership fee for us. And these are the type of things that you get in that membership fee. These are the type of things that are not discussed on these particular levels because it basically is not, it's not that it's not a concern, but for us, these are things that are so important. And with that comes a membership to NAR. I mean, not NAR, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, which you get a lot of benefits from that. Car rentals, computers, hotels. It's so many things that you become, you benefit from when you become a member of the Philadelphia Metropolitan Board of Realtors. So I want you to encourage, I want you to become a member. These are the type of things that we're going to be stressing in the coming years now. We focus on some major seminars we do. We're going to focus on some accreditations, some certifications that are not going to be those certifications that you just get from the general population. I'll give you one example. We had a certification 2 years ago before COVID, or was it last year with COVID, where we studied, we got a certification in commercial real estate. So many of us that were part of those workshops now have designations that are on our card that deal with commercial real estate. It was insightful. It gave us a fantastic knowledge of commercial real estate, apartments with commercial real estate at the bottom, 44 unit places, 23 unit places, how to deal and negotiate with that. So these are all of the things that you get as being a member of our particular organization, which is really, really, really important. So we want to stress that. We want to talk about these things that we think are interesting and most appropriate with regards to our particular community, because we do have some things that only are happening in our community. And let me say this, as part of my full-time job is the chief of staff for a sitting councilman. My district is gentrifying almost more than anyone else's other than Daryl's and President Daryl Clark and Mark Squealer, who is also in Center City. There is so much home theft going on in the area. It is unbelievable how African Americans are being displaced and people of color are being displaced because they did not have these things in play and in process when they went to deal with the death of a loved one and things of this nature. So these are the type of things that we want to bring up as an organization. I hope you enjoyed it. And because I thoroughly did, but we need to have this conversation once a year. There's no doubt in my mind that I want to talk to the board about making this a part of the conversation once a year so that we can move the ball forward and learn more about it. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Yvette Biggs, who is our new regional vice president, who is a major part of this committee as well, and who has helped us a lot. Yvette.
Thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everybody. Chris, that was awesome. I like that. So just to kind of piggyback on what Chris just talked about in regards to the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, although we're comprised mostly of African Americans, the Realtors organization embraces all qualified real estate practitioners who are committed to achieving our vision, which is democracy in housing. Democracy in housing is not just an idea, it's the foundation of our mission. So very quickly, I just want to go through some of the things that we're talking about or that we're doing on the national level. And we have 5 pillars. Those 5 pillars include faith-based initiatives. So basically, I believe PMBR has a local church that they're actually working with to do different activities, such as getting those members prepared to be able to purchase a home. We have a WIRE initiative, which is women in real estate, diversity and inclusion for small businesses, government affairs and advocacy. And basically that has a lot to do with our Sheba report, the state of housing in Black America, and just different things that we need to do and work on for our Black and Brown brothers and sisters who are looking to purchase homes. And then we also have the multi-generational wealth initiative. So, Chris, I haven't had this discussion with you, but you know how my wheels start to turn. We need to get both William and Miss Olivia back on board and maybe do some different workshops and things of that nature, because that would tie in perfectly with our multi-generational wealth. And just to give you a general idea as to what that encompasses, that's basically educating our millennials and getting them prepared for the home buying process, and talking about saving money. And then it goes all the way down the line to our senior citizens, which is where it ties in perfectly with what our speakers have been talking about today. Setting up a will, setting up a trust, and having to talk about the uncomfortable conversation about being prepared for death. So I definitely appreciate everybody and everything that has been set up for today. And definitely to our speakers, especially with it being last minute. We definitely appreciate you all and look forward to working with you all in the future. Thank you.
Hi. Okay. So
Gwen, you are on mute.
You're muted, Gwen.
oh, I'm sorry. So the Women's Council. I'm the president of the reinstated Women's Council for the Philadelphia tri-state area. We are doing our kickoff meeting next week. So if you register through Eventbrite, you'll be getting a email from me when that is going to be. And one of the things that Women's Council does is financial literacy. And that's why I took the job, because that's my thing. It's getting us educated so that we know what everybody else knows. Brown and Black people don't have an advantage of their, dad coming home from a Fortune 500 company and talking about wealth at dinner, and how money works. So we're going to be the people to present that to the Black and Brown communities. And I already wrote down, Miss Olivia, the art of creating generational wealth. So you will be coming back either through Women's Council or PMBR to do that presentation. We're going to have Mr. Fakins do some more things throughout the year. So we really would like you guys, if you're not a member of PMBR and Women's Council, to join us. The other thing we're going to be talking about next week is some of you have certifications and can teach classes. And we want you to start teaching classes to potential home buyers, and getting more of them, more of our community buying homes and not renting away their lives, being land owners. So with that being said, Miss Tony, did you have something? You're on mute.
Yeah, I do. I want to make a personal thank you to Olivia Stone Esquire. I had the opportunity that she serviced my seller on land. Well, actually, we settled on Thursday. So when the city failed us or unable to keep their commitment, I reached out to her. She made a commitment within less than 24 hours to provide this service us today. So I just want to especially thank you, Ms. Ms. Stone Esquire, for your reaching out and making this happen. I almost think it was more beneficial.
That's great.
But thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to put my email in the chat. so that if anybody is interested in joining or are interested in teaching some literacy classes, email me. And between Women's Council, PMBR, and Yvette in the region, we got a couple of states involved. We will have you on something teaching something. And if you don't teach, we're going to get you certified to teach so that you can go out and your buyers and your different real estate aspects that everybody deals with, because not everybody's an agent on here. We're going to educate our community and catch us up where everybody else is. So
don't forget about Gabriella's questions.
Yes. So with that being said, we're going to adjourn everybody. But those of you who had questions like Gabrielle can stay on for a little bit, and perhaps our speakers can stay on a little bit to answer further questions.
And also before we adjourn as well, Chris and Annette, if you could stay on.
Okay.
Okay, you're on, Gabrielle.
Gabrielle.
Alrighty, guys. Again, thank you so much for holding this on a Saturday afternoon. Listen, it's extremely beneficial, and I'm proud to say that I'm part of Fierce Realty Corp, based right out of Philadelphia. And the information that you have provided, I've actually had some of these conversations with my clientele, and I'm honored to say that 99.9% of my clientele is part of the Black American community. And these are actually things that we talk about, where whether I have a rental listing, we're saying, well, we wish that there was a way to provide this information to our children, disregarding our so amazing school district, right? Our future. There needs to be a way that we can provide this information. In good faith. Can you hear me?
Now we can. Go ahead. You're unmuted.
Okay. And just to work on saving money and knowing more about credit, and all of these things are so beneficial. And these are conversations that I do have with my clients. Now, thank you again, everyone, for all the information that you've provided. Now, as a licensed listing agent, my first question is, and it's a simple one, is the price of title to be ran standard across the board, regardless of whichever company you choose?
So who's that question for?
For everyone, whomever. I just have a question just in regards to being a part
asking
of...
if the rules are standard with all title companies?
Yes.
Yes, they should be.
Okay, great.
Yeah, they should be, yeah.
What I find is for the underwriters that has to clear specifically with regard to inheritance tax, the issues regarding an inheritance tax appraisement. And when you don't have it, the amount that is to be escrowed. So that varies from title company to title company. I've had one company that escrowed 75% of the sale just because inheritance tax hasn't been paid, even though the tax rate for the seller or the buyer, the transaction was like 4.5%. So not all title companies will do that, but they generally will all escrow money, and we get the inheritance tax return filed and paid at the date of the closing. I've only had one title company that, based on my documentation and their payment of the tax at closing, that they did not hold an escrow. But I generally tell my clients that they're always going to hold an escrow. They determine that escrow amount. I prepare the return and ask them to pay it out of the escrow. And then they will always do that. And they just hold the remainder until I get an appraisement, which takes about 6 months. So many of my clients don't get the balance of their money from the sale until after 6 months has passed when we get the appraisement.
Let me also add to that. Sometimes it's about the relationship that you have with the title company. So I've been around for about 30 years. So, you can negotiate. So, you want to develop relationships with title companies. But part with attorney Olivia said they're going to escrow something because of liability.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that, answering that question for me. My following question is, now as an agent, now let's say as a buyer's agent, is there a way that I can pre-perform maybe like a minor title search to, let's say, prevent an absurd easement that this person's been parking in my driveway for 25 years, and now all of a sudden I have a buyer, we get an accepted offer, and then bam, we find out that we have a prescriptive easement on our driveway. Is there something I can do to maybe to be more informative to my buyer?
Okay, I think you might be talking about adverse possession where someone's been using something for over 20 years.
Sure.
No, that's not what she's talking. Attorney Olivia, do you want to say something?
I'm not sure whether that what the question really was. What was it again?
I think
can you folks hear me pretty well?
Yeah, because you were just specifically saying, can you do a title search on your own?
Well, not really a full title search on my own, but at least get some preliminary information to avoid a terrible, easement in the future that's like so absurd that it's like, why would this even be an easement? But it happens and it's possible.
Yes, I think you can Google judgments. You can put in a person's name, and there is a docket search, and the docket will pull up all of the instances in which a person was involved in anything legal, whether landlord, tenant, or foreclosure, or things like that.
Okay, and you said it's called a docket search, right?
Yes, and you can put the person's name in.
Yeah, and you can also get a short search done as well with the title company. They can do a short search as opposed to a longer search. You can get a short search done, but that's the title company. That's not you. So I mean, it doesn't. I don't know if that answers your question. But
right.
That's helpful. I mean, it definitely still answers it in some other way, because I am in somewhat of a situation where I do have a seller, and he had it on the market prior. And he said he had a buyer, but there was a problem with title. Now he couldn't tell me. And I feel like maybe someone else is able to perform a preliminary title search just to where they're looking at our lot and saying, oh no, I don't want anything to do with that. And here I am clueless.
Right. Yeah.
Information you guys have provided with me is very beneficial. So thank you.
And your seller should be aware of what the problem with the title was, since he is the seller. So he's just not revealing it. The prior title company might have put it in writing even.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that all the parties should receive, is a copy of the title report.
Sure. Thank you all. And I believe that concludes all of my questions.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, this is really good.
Yeah.
Okay. So are we closed out?
Yeah, we if anybody has any more questions, we put the links to the different speakers. Thank you again, speakers, for stepping in at the last minute. And also we have some links to PMBR, NARAB, Women's Council, and also our Facebook groups. Okay. So have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Let's see, leave meeting. How do I leave?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Annette and Gwen, for inviting me.
No
Good,
problem.
Diane. Good to see you. Beautiful home.
I'm glad you got on.
Oh, Joanne. I see Joanne over there.
Yeah, I saw her sneak in at the end, Miss Joanne.
Yeah, the last time I saw her was when we did the $1 million listing.
Please forgive me. I am so upset that I was out and I forgot.
That's okay.
Well, at least you showed up, Joanne.
Listen, late and wrong, but I do need to talk to you ladies. Somebody got to help me with my will and my y'all
leave everything to me, Joanne. I'm gonna show you just how to do that.
I'm gonna say the same thing. okay? And probably 20 other people listening, right? Leave it to me, leave it to her.
And see, I thought you were going to say leave it to PMBR. See, y'all just totally forgot about the organizational.
Ooh, well, I'm so glad
we can give them a piece of what we get.